All right, so I'm Rob May. I'm the CEO of Nova. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me. I'm going to talk about how machines can understand brands and some of the problems for brands from generative AI. And then I'll tell you a little bit about one of the solutions that we have. So I am a tech entrepreneur. I'm not a branding person, as you'll see from some of my slides later, which my head of design is not happy with. So sorry if some of you cringe. I'm also a partner at the AI Operators Fund, which makes seed stage investments in early stage companies. And I've invested in about 127 companies since I sold my first startup in 2014. Those have almost all been AI focused, so I've seen a lot of what works and what doesn't. Now, can machines understand brands? So there was a paper that came out in 2014 from Google on word vectors. And this is a little bit old and dated, but I'm going to give you the general summary. You've heard people talk about how this is all math. So what the word vector paper did was it compressed a bunch of words from analyzing a bunch of text into a mathematical vector space. And then you saw this. You saw that the vector between king and queen was offset by the vector between man and woman. And that is the difference between the word king and the word queen, right? So what we realized is suddenly we could do math with words, and this is how computers understand language in a new way, where you don't have to design a dictionary and all that kind of stuff. So it turns out you can also do that for brands. You can take the words that describe a bunch of brands, and you can put them into a vector space, and you can see how brands behave, how brands think about themselves versus how customers think about them. You can see how brands position themselves against each other. And all this kind of stuff. So part of what we do at Nova is we try to focus on all the different ways to continue to teach machines to understand brands. And we're going deeper and deeper and deeper there. Now, you've heard a lot about generative AI. Some of the things that you might be doing with it soon are using it to create customer emails, using it to create landing pages, ads of all kinds, ebooks, videos coming soon. It'll be here probably in the next 12 months. That stuff's getting pretty good. But most importantly, it can do this at a speed that humans can't. It can create hundreds of thousands or millions of hyper-personalized, hyper-targeted experiences, which is pretty powerful. But how do you know the machine understands your brand and that these are the types of things that you would put out if you had the ability to oversee everything? And you can't when you operate at this scale. So let's look at some of the problems. 4 key problems if you've used Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or even ChatGPT that can come up when you're dealing with brands. One is poor quality output, which we'll show you some examples of. Number 2 is even if the output is quality, is it on brand? Like if you're Coca-Cola and your ad looks more like a Pepsi ad, and like we as humans, we kind of know this, right? Like I could show you an ad without the logos, and you could be like, oh, that's probably Pepsi, that's probably North Face, that's probably, you know, whatever. How do you teach that to a machine? Easy creation and use of brand by non-authorized users. So a lot of the big tools like ChatGPT will say, I think somebody said earlier, like you can't get any celebrity outputs or certain things, but like you're going to want celebrity outputs in generative AI and brand outputs and all that, right? So we have to solve this problem. And then the biggest problem is humans can't quality check this at scale. So when I was preparing for this, I typed this into Midjourney, a marathon runner drinking a Coca-Cola. I'm going to show you the first 4 things that came up. Number 1, a man sticking a Coca-Cola bottle up his nose. We're not going to run that in an ad. Number 2, I don't even know what this is, but also the guy has a Nike logo on his shirt, right? So in the statistical corpus that this was trained on, Nike and running, marathon, they're so tightly tied together that the machine doesn't know that, like, maybe Coca-Cola doesn't want this in there, maybe Nike doesn't want this in there, right? These are some of the problems that these things have. Number 3, this is not a terrible picture, but the guy's kind of running the wrong way, and he looks like he's about to throw his bottle of Coke, so I'm not sure that's what you'd want either. And then the 4th one was actually the worst one. Like, I don't know what this is. But you've got the guy's like arm going in his shoe, and the bottle's got 2, and like I don't know what's happening on the left side. So, so you can see like these tools, while they can make your life much, much easier, they're going to create a whole new set of problems, right? Which is basically what technology does. Solves some problems, creates new ones for us all the time. Now, This comes from a demo that we actually gave to Coca-Cola a couple weeks ago, where you look at these pictures on the left, and we used it to create all these other images, which are sort of derivatives of that, but targeted to these different demographics, right? Female 30 to 40, 40 to 50, male 40 to 50, et cetera. To generate these 8 reasonably good pictures, I mean, you could pick on the hands there, but it took us about 2,000 pictures because most of them came out with something like this. So again, if you're a human and you're like, I want to use generative AI and I want to hyper-personalize everything and I just want to like, this is going to create a new level of scale, it's like, no, it's going to create a nightmare, right? Not to mention, you can find a whole bunch of really cool but very unauthorized brand collaborations online. But I suspect this is also something that you're going to want to do. Brands are collaborating more and more. Brand matters more in this world where, like, these AI tools are making all the execution stuff, all the operational stuff easier and easier. This is where you can still compete, right? What does your brand stand for, and what does it mean? So you want to take control of these collaborations, right? And this is my favorite, right? So this is going to show you how ChatGPT doesn't understand stuff. So we decided, well, let's feed ChatGPT the Tesla style guide and ask it to design some Tesla ads. So if you look over here under do not, about 2/3 of the way down, the second line is do not use the word luxury to describe Tesla. This is actually from the style guide. They do not want you to mention the word luxury. So then on the right, we go over here and we say, based on the rule set that we just gave you, write Tesla ads for the rich. Look at the #1 ad. It uses the word luxury, right? It already fails. Why does it fail? Because rich and luxury are so tied together in the English language and these statistical models, you can't override it with a set of rules. So I come back to, how do we solve this if we want to take advantage of this stuff at scale? Well, this is what we've been working on for the last year, and it's called BrXnd. And the idea is that this is a brand safety layer for generative AI that right now supports a couple of tools, and it'll eventually support everything that you want to use your generative AI for. So it starts with the digital style guide. You can upload this in PDF or Word format. We'll pull it apart with natural language processing, and we will build a machine learning classifier for each of the things, your font, your spacing, your color, et cetera, so that anything that's produced from any tool we can check to see if it passes the style guide. This actually gets a little bit complicated in things like you have a hexadecimal specification of red, and when you pass those files around between different programs or they get compressed or whatever, that starts to change, and so you can set some parameters around how far we can go off that, but anyway, this also gives you a machine-readable format for your brand guidelines, which I think is something that we're all going to need in the future. This is the architecture. Mainly, we'll focus on these bottom boxes and what they do. So these dark purple boxes are the models that we run through. These are machine learning models that look for certain things. So on the left, the far left, we look for general safe for work stuff. No profanity, no nudity, no whatever. Obviously, that can be tweaked if you're a very, very edgy brand and you want some of that stuff. But in general, I think most people don't. Then we have quality check machine learning models, right? So this is not one giant model. This is what we call an ensemble, right? It goes through all of these. The quality check models look for like no blurry eyes, no 2 noses, no 6 fingers on hands, et cetera. The on-brand models are the complicated ones. This was the harder problem to solve. This is where we had to train a model to say, like, what is the essence of Nike? What is the essence of Coca-Cola? What is the essence of Disney? And does this like feel like the brand? And I'll talk about how we did that in a minute. Then we had the style adherence models. These are the ones that come from the style guide. So do we meet the font, the spacing, everything that is really, really important to you guys as designers. And then the on-campaign machine learning models just look at things like, is this an Easter campaign? And if so, does it convey some ideas about Easter or whatever? So just making sure you're staying true to that stuff. So how did we train these models? Well, we scraped a bunch of data, some that was public, some from like, I've sold a lot of software to a lot of people over the years in all these companies, so a lot of them gave us some data and are pretty friendly. So we trained on 1,000 brands, about 11 million advertisements of various types, images and text, 2,500 style guides, about 80% which we found on the web, and another 20% which were sort of given to us by friends. And so now what that allows us to do is we have this giant model that's been trained up on all this stuff. We can fine tune it to a brand with just a dozen or 2 dozen examples. So it can tell you if something is Nike or Adidas, which we'll look at in a second. And so what's the output of this? We are plugged into other platforms where as you use them, Figma, Canva, HubSpot, Marketo, whatever it is, we're constantly scoring the things that come out. So what you get is you get a score. How on brand is this? And how does that brand score break down? So is this something you want to auto-approve because it's 98%? Is this something you want to auto-reject because it's only 70%? Is this something that you want a human to weigh in on? Well, there's a workflow for that. And speaking of workflows, the workflows are coming too. I know some of you guys that are like in the licensing business have these more complicated, like, well, the brand means this in this channel or with this partner, and it means this somewhere else. So we're working on that too. So this is an example. We take the Nike logo off this, right? Now, most of us would look at this and be like, that's a Nike ad, not an Adidas ad, because that's how it feels, right? Well, this is what the model says as well. 98% sure that it's a Nike ad. Running some interesting things through this, we've learned some pretty cool stuff. One is this ad that's on the left is an ad that Pepsi ran saying, we wish you a scary Halloween, right? This could have been a Coca-Cola can. Coke turned around and picked this up and said, everybody wants to be a hero. Now, the reason they could do this, and the model proves this out, is that Coke has the stronger brand. So if you run both of these through the BrXnd model, the one on the right scores very heavily as Coca-Cola. The one on the left scores about 75% as Coca-Cola. So other uses of teaching machines to understand brands can apply to some of your strategy, like Pepsi probably shouldn't have done this, right? It was like not a great idea. And then if you're Coke and you want to respond to it, well, if you can figure out from a machine understanding of the brand that you have the stronger brand, that can tell you if you should like defer or if you should go on the attack or counter position, whatever you're trying to do. So I could fill a whole presentation with like weird things like this that we've learned. So maybe I'll come back next year and do that one. So with BrXnd, these are the things that we check for. I think I've already covered most of these, but the key one and the one that's really, really hard is on brandedness. And the reason that we focused on that is some of the platforms are starting to do this. Like if you've used Jasper.ai, they're starting to collect brand assets. These content tools are giving you a voice. But again, you have to be consistent across everything that you use. And if each tool that you use builds their own set of models, like you need your model, right? You need something that understands your brand from assets that you've uploaded that you can use everywhere. So here's another example of what the user experience is like. These are a bunch of Tesla logos that we scraped across the web. So the top two on the upper left score like 98 and 100%, right? They're like strike zone. They meet all the style criteria, the on-branded criteria. The next three, the two on the right and the one on the bottom left, they score like in the 90%, but they technically meet all the requirements, but they don't quite feel right, as you can probably tell. And then they just deteriorate from there, right? So Tesla's, the word's not allowed to be above the logo, so you see some that fail for that reason. And then some of them just look totally crazy. So these go all the way down to like 10%. Like you can tell that's Tesla, but that stuff would never get approved. So what the experience is like for you if you're developing a bunch of assets is you get a ranking like this, and you can quickly scroll through it and be like, okay, here's stuff that humans need to check, and then here's stuff that we're just going to reject out of hand. So what's next for BrXnd? So today we support a web interface. So if you have content of any type, you can upload it and get scores. We use this. We've seen a weird batch of companies that want to use it for like franchisee and franchisor relationships, where you have a franchisor who's got strict brand guidelines, and they give all the material to the franchisees, who then sort of ignore it and create a lot of their own content. And their argument is like, we're busy and we don't have time to like come back to you and wait 2 weeks on turnaround for you to prove everything. And you're like, well, upload it here and we'll give you a thumbs up or thumbs down really, really quickly, right? So you can move that process along. We also have some merchandising partners that have a sort of similar use case where you're creating, this is where we got the Tesla guidelines, right? Which is Tesla teams are always trying to create hats and socks and t-shirts or whatever. And it's nobody's like job to approve these. So the company that makes this merchandise for them is constantly waiting and is like, this would help us speed up our cycle of getting things approved. So So we're doing integration with them. We also support AdWords and Facebook. So if you're using one of these tools that generates a lot of ads, or like I think Facebook is now generating a lot of ads on its own, we can score those and rank those and auto-approve those or whatever it may be. We're working on, and we'll be out this summer, HubSpot and Figma. I'm based in, I split time between New York and Boston. Nova's based here, but I still live in Boston part-time. And I'm very close to the HubSpot team, so they've been working on this. And then we're coming out with this tool called BrXnd for influencers, because a couple of the investments that I've made that are in the influencer space are really interested in this idea that brands want to work more with influencers, influencers want to work more with brands, but like getting the influencers to understand what's acceptable and what's not is not always the most fun thing in the world. If you sell high-end pens and you want to have Mr. Beast as your guy and he takes a picture with him up his nose, like that's not something that you want, but he might think that's really funny, right? So how can you use this to sort of approve that, move that process along by making it easier for everybody to understand the guidelines and approve things? And then later this year, one of the things that we're working on, and this is based on just my hypothesis as a tech person on where I think this market's going to go, I think all of you that run serious brands are going to have a foundation model. So you saw Bloomberg came out with Bloomberg GPT, and it's trained on some financial data. You saw that like Midjourney won't entirely spit out a Coca-Cola logo, right? Because it's probably programmed in there that it shouldn't. Those are some of the guardrails. I think there will be a Coke foundation model and a Disney foundation model. You'll have these for your sub-brands if you're if you're Procter & Gamble or somebody that has a bunch of those brands. And so we want to be the company that manages those, that develops those, and that helps you plug those into everything that you're using so that all this branding stuff can work at machine scale. And with that, I'll also say we're talking to a lot of big companies, but if any of you guys know somebody in branding at Nike, I would love an intro, buy you a very nice dinner here in New York. It's my favorite brand. I think they're amazing, so I'd love to see what the data tells us about them. And with that, if you want to email me, follow me on Twitter, check out my newsletter, or go to the website. These are the ways you can contact me. I'm highly Googleable and all over the web. So that's all I have.